government. The other day, I opened and read it. It was them giving me credit. They took note of every single rapper that I shredded and said I broke records with the local paramedics. I was like, bet it. I got a fetish for these funerals, getting letters for lyrics and bonus as per usual. Usual suspects.
Back to BOMBA Live, the talk show you've been waiting for your entire life. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have a special guest in the BOMBA Live studios. This is exclusive. See, that's why y'all gotta stop watching basic cable and all that nonsense on what Paramount or Disney Plus, because you get the real deal right here. Planetary from Outerspace in the Army of the Pharaohs Crew, legendary Philly hip hop underground legend.
What up?
Hey, my little brother. What's up, Mario? What's up, dog?
That's right.
You know what I mean?
What's up?
Want to shout out,
Really?
Speaking of little brothers, I want to shout out the producer of this episode, our director, Maxwell Collazo, in the background, who's giving me signals. He's doing a good job. Planetary, this is just such a special time for you, professionally and personally. You know, I want people that we're going to talk later about your new project, Pluto, which people can peep on all platforms May 12th. Talk about the hip hop journey. Talk about this. Now we're 2 generations into the journey, right?
Yeah.
We want to hear about that.
Pretty much, yeah.
But for people that maybe haven't followed your career, why don't we start with where did the hip hop journey begin for Planetary?
Well, it had to start like when I guess I would start it at the writing part. What made me start writing, right? And you were part of that story. I'm sure you remember the story, but we were playing basketball one day at Holy Angels. Guy came out the house. He said to us, he rapped, right? You remember this?
Mm-hmm.
He started. I know how to rap. I'm gonna go ahead and spit something, or whatever we said back then. He started spitting. I said, man, he was actually good, He started showing us pictures with Will Smith. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
He came out with like a photo album. He was with Jazzy Jeff. So we remember that?
Yeah.
He came out with like a photo album. He was with Jazzy Jeff. So we
and just for people to realize, we're talking about Philadelphia. We're Philadelphia, Puerto Ricans.
Yeah, straight from Philly.
This ain't the Bronx, so no due respect.
You
know what I mean?
Yeah, straight.
This is straight North Philly, and so we're
yeah.
talking a hip hop era.
Yeah.
This is like post Schoolie D.
Yeah.
When Jazzy Jeff, and I do want to talk about Jazzy in one of these episodes.
This was 89.
So okay, so to give people that perspective, okay,
yeah.
This is before State Property.
I was 11.
This is before State Property.
Yeah.
This is post Schoolie D. That era, golden era hip hop.
This is when Will Smith was hot.
This is when Will Smith
on the hip hop scene, not the movies. He wasn't an actor yet.
And Jazzy was already like not only his partner, but a local DJ legend already.
Yeah.
Back then,
they was top of the Philly. They was top of their game at this point. So he was showing us the pictures, and then one day I was in your room, and you're listening to the radio, and they played "Road to the Riches" from Cool G Rap, and that was the verse that the dude at the schoolyard spit, because I remember he said getting richer and richer. The police took my picture, and then he went like that, like a picture. So I remembered the line.
Still one of your all-time favorite MCs, Cool G.
Oh yeah, 100%. So I remember I was so mad that I heard it on the radio, and I'm like, that ain't this guy. Just spit Cool G Rap's verse, and I'm gonna write my own. I'm gonna try to write my own, and that's how that started. And then from there, I just, back then the radio played good stuff. You know what I mean? So everything was good at that point.
Fast forward, going into before we get into the putting yourself on wax, you're going into high school. And again, we're talking about a very special era of Philly hip hop. Why don't you talk to people about, as a youngster, 15, 16, the environment you're in as an aspiring MC?
Right. So where it went from 11 to basically mid-high school, I guess, when I got to Lincoln, was I just listened to it and wrote. Never really recorded. Didn't even understand that part yet. But then when I got into high school, that's when you get the ciphers, the guys rapping in the hallways, the lunch tables with the beats. And I had so much written back then, memorizing that stuff was easy. So that's when we got into it. That's when I was starting to allow to go out. Like mom let me go out. I could get on the bus. I can go to South Street, all that stuff. So I wish they had it now. Like I wish the generation now had this because they don't have it. Because
it was organic.
It was
organic. Tell people about some of the
so like what
artists that you were engaging with before anyone knew who they were. They were just kids.
So what we would do is we would have high schools would battle each other. So like there'd be rappers from Washington, that would go to Lincoln, and then Lincoln go to Washington. King go to Lincoln, Lincoln go to King. You know, all the high schools had their rappers, and everybody would battle. There would be peaceful stuff, no, you know, just real battle stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then you would, you know, when you got out of the high school part and you actually went out on Saturday or, you know, Friday night or whatever, and then you go to South Street, you could pick a corner. It used to be like, I'm gonna go to 4th Street. There's gotta be somebody out there. It's just ciphers and beatbox, you know. So they don't have that now, which I wish they really had that now, but it just doesn't happen like that. But that's basically how you started back then. That's how you knew everybody. Like we would go to Broad and Omni. Like Eve used to be at Broad and Omni.
Eve, you hear the names we're talking about here.
Yeah,
that's what she was. Eva Destruction.
She was Eva Destruction back then.
You know what I'm saying?
We used to hang out with at 20th in Ontario with major figures. You know, Bumpy Johnson, Gillie, Spado, all them. Peanut used to be our producer. I talk to Peanut on Twitter all the time.
Much respect
to
Peanut, man.
2020.
I haven't seen Peanut.
That's a legend. That's a legend. That's
man.
That's a legend. So, you know, all these people, we were all in the same world. You know, all in the same world. Everybody went their own separate ways, but there was so many Black Thought, you know, back then.
I remember the day, I don't know, I was probably 19 in college and you were 15 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember the day you literally sat me down and said, Ray, I got to sit down and tell you something. I thought it was like a problem. You were like I have this group that's going to revolutionize hip hop. They are a band.
Yeah.
And they're called the Square Roots. This is before Roots. They were the Square Roots, he said. And the MC's sick. They got a drummer, crazy hair. They go to Kappa.
Yeah.
They're going to change the game. So we're talking about in high school, this is not just Philly being a great influence, music hub, period. Hip hop is in a golden era.
Yeah.
Philly hip hop in general is in a golden era. And Planetary, the Puerto Rican Kid, Ryman, Battling Eve, Music Soul Child was at the talent shows. Jill Scott is at the talent shows.
Yeah.
So how did that impact your life? Because you were around you always had a sense that some of these people were going to become, you always knew. You had an eye for talent.
Yeah.
And how did that impact just you as a person to be around that kind of artistic energy?
It became my life. I mean, you know, it just wasn't. It was. Once I got to that world, I never left. I'm still there. You know, like everything I thought I was supposed to do, I didn't do none of it. You know, like I was like, do I do this? Do I go to school? I just wanted to, you know, I just want to be a creative. I don't want to really do nothing else. You know. So, you know, like you said, like, you know, then when we got a little bit older, we got into the open mics, and then there was beat battles, and there's all these things. You know, you had all it was about was rap.
Rich Medina.
Yeah,
see, a lot of New York people will know that name.
Yeah, Bobito Footwork opened in Philly. Then once that opened in Philly, that's where everybody would go, because anytime New York had their hands in something, of course, that's where you go. You know, that's Bobito from New York.
We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about the career.
Right.
The career and that journey
and everything,
that journey to putting rhymes on wax and making music and producing 4 full-length feature albums, and then obviously the stuff you're doing now. When we come back from BOMBA Live, more of this exclusive interview with Philly underground hip hop legend Planetary from Outerspace and Army of the Pharaohs Crew, and we'll come back and talk about the next steps in his journey. This is a love story to hip hop fan. It got even hotter in the desert this weekend at the weekend 2 of Coachella when mira quién llegó acá. Gabriela Berlingeri, girlfriend, friend, ex, novia, special friend of Bad Bunny arrived, and guess what? She didn't just show up. She had VIP front row hookup, just like his new jaunt, Kendall Jenner. Y Kendall Jenner quedó allí callado como una boba. Didn't say one word about the whole situation. Don't you think that sums up this whole thing? On behalf of the BOMBA Life family, Gabi, we wish you the best of luck in your quest to free Benito. We have some exciting news to report here on BOMBA Live Politics. Senior White House advisor and the granddaughter of civil rights icon Cesar Chavez, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, it's being reported will become President Biden's campaign manager for his presidential reelection run in 2024. This shows, to me, Biden showing some very sound judgment. Julie is someone, a political operative and leader of immense capability and with lots of experience, and certainly someone who has the judgment for such a critical job. But it also sends a very clear message, something I've been saying here on Bomba Live repeatedly, and you have to understand the road to winning the White House and controlling the Congress and the Senate in 2024 is going to go through the Latino vote. Welcome back to Bomba Live, the talk show you've been waiting for your whole life. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're enjoying this exclusive conversation with Planetary, underground hip hop legend, Army of the Pharaohs, Outerspace, 565. Much respect.
The one.
I mean, come on, we got a lot of crews, Collazo fam,
QD,
and I know a lot of people are watching this who are fans of yours. Who were like, "Hold on, this nerdy guy's your brother," and on the flip side, they're like, "Wow, you got a brother that's really cool." Yeah. So this has always been an interesting. We've always been an interesting duo as we've gone around the country, toured around the country, and so this is a very special conversation for me. Check out Project Pluto coming out May 12th on all platforms. We're going to talk about Planetary's solo project in a second, but let's get back to it. So you not only become identified and are all in the culture, you're rapping, you're writing, you're learning your craft, but talk to us about the journey to, in your case, be part of a group, put a group together, Outerspace, which has been around over 20 years. And then taking that step to record and distribute your own music.
Well, so in that time where we were going, when I was in high school, that's when we met. You know, when I was with Crip, my partner, right? So he never really cared about hip hop too much. Like he cared, but I got him into it in full, even though his brother did. But you know, the basement, you know, you were there, all the vinyl, I would get all the records, we'd go to the Funko Mart and all that. So they kind of just followed my lead with that. And I said, we should try to start writing. You should write something too. So we were just, you know, that's how that started. Then we became a group. And from there, because of how the city was, we were all the way up top. So, you know, where we lived at, there was nothing. You know, there was very little. But you had to migrate to the, you know, you had to migrate to the cities. So we would go there.
I remember, people got to remember too, even Philly wasn't, you know, Philly had a niche, but I mean, until the late 80s, until really LA came out, Schoolie, I mean, a couple people, you know, OG and the Bulldogs and Boss, there was a couple random people. But I mean, until the mid 80s, hip hop was basically a local New York art form. In a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Until Schoolie D and some other people. So it wasn't even that easy for Philly artists. Well, so you really had to go to the hub.
But that's why I said when Bobbito came to Philly said, "Oh, we're important now." You know, like Bobbito was looked upon as a god at that point. His shows, his mixtapes, all that stuff. So you're like, "Oh, he opened one here." So that was a special thing. And then you had all the New York. You know, then New York was here now. So you're like, "Oh shit, they got us in the mix." You know,
that's right.
So that was a big piece for
that
a lot
was
of
like
people. That was a big piece for a lot of people.
Jay-Z connected with the State Property Crew. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, way before that. So
see, young boys got to write down stuff when you watch Bomba Live. So
when that opened, see, at that time, we did start recording because around the way had a Cheltenham Avenue had Fresh Tracks. You know, we found out about it. We said let's try to do it. It was hard back then because nobody made beats. You know, we met Peanut and we got lucky with that. So he would give us beats, we record. It was a totally different way of doing things, but we were one of the only people that really were doing that in the area, I guess. So we had tapes, we put labels on them. So everyone's like, "Oh, you have tapes." You know, back then that was such a big thing. Yeah. So we got a buzz from that just because we actually had something for you to listen to, not just rapping.
This is really even before or right around when mixtapes in New York was just starting.
Yeah, I mean, this is 92.
You know what I mean?
91, 92.
That's like before
Woo. Yeah, I was like a sophomore.
That's before Diddy. You know what I mean? Like, we're right on that cusp.
So what happened was from that point, we started to get like, you know, street buzz, you know, like nothing, you know what it was back then. It was like, you don't know, you know that people around you know that you do it. You don't really know who knows you outside of your little area. But then when Bobbito and all that stuff came, I remember I used to always listen to the radio. Bahamadia had a show, Jay Ski, all those guys, right? All them legends on the radio. Yeah. But Bahamadia specifically, she had B-sides. And she used to play Vinny, Jedi Mind Tricks, right? And I used to hear I forget the name of the song offhand, but I used to always hear the same song every week. Bro. I guess she was like every Wednesday or something. Every week I would hear the same song, same song, same song, same song. I didn't know who it was. Thought it was like a black boy, right? I just thought it was a black boy, whatever.
He still has that kind of voice.
But there was other guys on the song, not just him, but he stood out. So his voice stood out. So when we went to Bobito, when we went to Footwork, the open mics were there, and he got up on stage and he did the verse that I know. So I was like, oh, this is the dude from the song. That's dope. You know, whatever. Then I got up, did my thing, whatever. And right away, boom. That's how we linked with Vinny, because he's like, yo, dope. Let's link
Vinny
up.
Paz, Jedi Mind Tricks.
Yeah.
If you don't know who that is, one of the most influential indie MCs of this era.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people to, the easiest thing to do is just look up his really his seminal Joe Rogan interview from a few years ago.
Yeah.
And that gives you a lot of the breakdown. But a legend and family with us,
Yeah, right. So at that point, that's where it escalated for us pretty quick, because he was already at a point where he was funding his own music. Like he had guys around him. They were all smart. He's smart. They knew what they were doing. So they were able to get music outside of the city to DJs' hands, actual pieces of music, vinyls, whatever, tapes, whatever. So when he started circulating that way, he was getting on college radio heavy, stuff like that. So we got so cool so fast. He was just like, yo, let's put them out, That's basically where it started. So he gave us our first opportunity to be on vinyl. He put it out, artwork, whatever. So that's where nobody else was doing that. And that's why we were able to get to that point. And that's probably why we're here now, still being able to have people that listen to our music, because we were ahead of the game. He was, and he put us in
distribution,
and he put us on to how to do things, so distribution, right? So we were one of the first, it wasn't popular. It was just getting to that.
How does it feel for you both to be such a strong influence on the Latino community and in the freestyle world? I'll start with Brenda.
You go first. Okay. I think the most important influence is that it doesn't matter where you come from, that if you're very optimistic and if it's something that you are passionate about, you should always work your hardest to be able to achieve your goal. And it doesn't, really need to be something where you look at a career or this is something that you want to do forever and say, I can never be famous, because there is always opportunity.
When all that's un fracaso, we're supposed to have these people of high integrity, of the highest caliber, of the highest judicial acumen in the Supreme Court that are supposed to be above all that nonsense. He's not just been the biggest sellout in the history of the Black America, but I would argue the biggest sellout to our country and our democracy in these modern times. Because if people don't believe in the judicial system, if people don't believe in that there's some baseline of respect for the Constitution on the highest levels of our judicial system, in the Supreme Court, puñeta, then we're not going to have the country that we should have.
And I encourage people to check out their archives. If you go on all the music platforms, you can check out all Outerspace music from over 20 years. How would you describe your music to people that don't know you?
I hate to say underground, because I'll hashtag it Underground Kings. We say we're Underground Kings because underground for me was never. To me, it's a sound. It's not a status. For me, because I'm like underground. That means that we're like nobody. Like people look at that as like, oh, those guys that people don't really know, but it's not true. For me, it's always been like a sound. So if you look at underground as a sound, that's what we are. But if you don't look at it as a sound, I guess we're just like we're just raw. We just rap on drums.
Yeah.
And we still like what we would do in the street to impress the next rapper. That's still.
So fast forward, you all released on some level through that collaboration and the audience you build up 4 albums. You toured all over the country, all over the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, and we'll have other time to have these conversations, but I mean, what was that like? You know, to get validation
the whole
from
thing,
your music.
I'll make it quick. The whole thing
from
was,
all over.
You don't know who knows you till you go. You're never gonna know. So as long as there's promoters that's gonna willing to give you a shot to prove yourself, which Vinny gave the opportunity got the opportunity for himself, and he brought us with him. So we had to see like where do you? It's basically like, okay, where do we stand? So the first tour is a struggle. You can't charge too much because you haven't proved it yet.
Yeah.
So we struggled together. You know, we came home with nothing, but we made enough to live.
Yeah.
Throughout it and pay some bills.
Build that credibility. Yeah, build that credibility.
But then the next time you're like, okay, but you know, when Vinny went out there, everything was love. It was packed. Most things were just packed, and it was like, oh, you don't know who knows you until you get there.
And it was
and the internet wasn't even there yet.
Yeah.
So that's even crazier. That's more DJs, college
radio. Yeah, college radio was a big thing.
That was huge back then. That was everything.
I mean, about Beat 'em and Stretch were college radio.
Yeah, college radio. Right. I mean, that's right. Everything for guys like us. That was everything.
No, and I remember you coming back the first time that once you went to the West Coast and the Latino hip hop fan base was dominant.
Right.
That's where you got more love there than you would have anticipated.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Tell people about the LA scene and that in Texas
was big for them.
Look at that.
And New Mexico, that whole
the Southwest,
south to the west. Yeah.
So that must have been like trippy.
It was crazy because you don't know.
You don't know, right?
You have no idea. Which you're like, what? Why? How? I can't even believe they brought us here because we don't know. You don't know because then the internet wasn't there to tell you.
Yeah.
You were just like, we have some vinyl out. There's colleges that play our stuff. You really don't know. But everything like that was crazy. Like
what did you learn about yourself touring?
That I didn't like it like I thought I would. You know, like touring is great, but I think 95% of people that tour the world and do music will be like, touring sucks because it's hard. It's hard, especially like I really started touring when kids, you know, my kids were being born.
Yeah.
So that's harder, but it's 99% work. There's very little fun.
Well, I tell people
it's 1% fun, which is the stage basically is your fun.
What I tell people is that when you throw the party, you're not having fun like everybody else.
No, you're organizing, you're cleaning, it's basically it's the same thing. Like, you know, it's business because it's so much and you're not home, you're not comfortable, you're not in your comfort zone. So but you got to do it. And I don't want to discourage people like you don't want to tour. Like
no.
You know what I'm saying? But
you want to get to the point where you get a little bored of it.
It's a job.
That's right.
And people have to respect it as a job. The people on the outside look at it.
Well, and we're not going to get a name, but there's artists that don't respect it as a job and cut corners. And I've had this conversation with our freestyle friends, Betty D and K7, like, well, why, and I've asked them, like, how do y'all have this longevity? You can't give it for 30 years. Like, because we go to sound check. We treat the promoter with respect. We do the in-store. We do the radio interview. We, you know what I mean? We might have a couple in the back, but we show up ready to perform.
Right. I remember we show up, we get to places early, don't leave, and they go, usually the only rappers that are ever on time. We've never had rappers on time. They don't even come to sound check. We're like, no. If you run it like a business, like you're supposed to run it and treat people like you want to be treated, you'll be out.
And the next time you come back, we're going to talk about the merch game because that's a whole other conversation. When we come back, we're going to talk about the comeback, the next iteration of Planetary's career, not just new Outerspace music, but as a solo artist for the first time ever. Check out Project Pluto coming out May 12th on all platforms. And we're going to talk about how a fortuitous phone call from Netflix verified that this was the direction you had to go.
Right.
I'm interviewed. This is my exclusive. This is Ray Collazo. Those are BOMBA Live. My exclusive interview with Planetary from Outerspace and the Army of the Pharaohs Crew. We'll be right back.